Do you know you can actually avoid manually entering the same or duplicate information into your SharePoint or Microsoft lists? That is correct. You can actually achieve that using list relationships where you can actually join the two lists together. We're going to look into that by creating a supplier order list relationship. But before we do that, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button so that you can stay tuned on any upcoming videos that I release on this channel. Now let's go and have a look how we can create those list relationships. So what we currently have on the screen is basically a supplier and product. So we have a list of suppliers and we have our internal list of products. Now what we want to achieve is we want to create a SharePoint list where we can actually capture whenever an order is placed for a particular product with any supplier. We want to capture what sort of product we placed and what sort of supplier we used for that product and what's the quantity on that product, right? You can create a SharePoint list where you can manually enter the supplier name and a product name and the quantity, and you can basically keep repeating the same information like supplier A, product A, supplier A, product B. But what you are actually doing in that case is you are entering the supplier A information again manually. So you kind of duplicating the data. So if in future your supplier A is actually changed to supplier Z, then you might have to manually update that information. So that's a lot of work and a lot of complexities. What we are actually trying to do here then is we will be looking at suppliers and products, and we will be trying to create a relationship between those two lists and then come up with a solution so that whenever a supplier information is actually added or a product information is actually added, it's actually referencing to your lists. And doing that, you can actually maintain that if there are any updates or deletions happening in future for a supplier's information or maybe to your products information, that can actually cascade to the whole list, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a SharePoint list called supplier first, and then we will be creating another SharePoint list called products to capture all the information that we have, right? So I'm going to go to a SharePoint site, and I have this SharePoint site. So let's click on home, and I'm going to create a new list. I'm going to use a blank list, and I'm going to name this list supplier, right? Wrong spelling, supplier, right? And create. And for the supplier, obviously, I need some information about the supplier. For example, let's rename this column as well. You can do column settings, rename. Let's rename this to supplier name, for example, right? And the next column we want to create is, let's say, email, and let's use text column. So I'll say next and enter email and click on save. So we got the supplier name, email, and let's add some other information, for example, a phone number. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create a list where we capture the information which is actually related to the supplier only, right? You could create more columns, for example, the company name of the supplier and some other information which is just relevant to the supplier, right? Once we have that, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add some supplier information. For example, I'm going to add some suppliers. So let's click on the grid view so that we can actually add multiple items. So first supplier, let's just say first supplier is Microsoft, for example, right? And our second supplier is Oracle. And then we have films, for example, right? You might have a different supplier for different products. The next supplier could be, let's just say, ABC Technical Services, right? So this is all the information about the supplier, and then that's the email. So I'm just going to type in the random emails. So let's just say test@test.com, and I'm going to basically use abc@test.com. So this is just the information that you're capturing about your suppliers, and then I'm just going to enter the random phone number. So once we have created this list, then we can actually look at creating another list, right? So let's just quickly enter the information in this list, and we enter the numbers. So these are some random numbers, and let's just say rrr@rrr.com, right? So we got the supplier information. So now let's just click on exit grid view. We have our supplier information ready. Now what we need to do is we need to create another list, which is basically the product list. So that list can be a list of all the products that you actually order from different suppliers. So you have to have a kind of look into your inventory, or basically whatever you are trying to achieve here by creating this list. So you need to identify what sort of products you basically order from different suppliers, right? So I'm just going to create another blank list, and I'm going to name it products, for example. Or you can name it items, whatever is the naming convention is within your organization, right? That's the name of the product, so I'm not going to change the title. And if you want to add some extra information about your product, you can add it, or you can basically add comments, but whatever information you want to add about products. But the title is essentially your product name. So I'm going to add, for example, computers, right? Then we have desktops. I might also have professional services, for example, audits, right? Which could be security audits or any audits, or you might be ordering some fruits from a supplier every day, right? And you want to capture that information. So let's just say fruits or milk, right? So this is basically all the products that you order from different suppliers. Okay. Now that we have the information about our suppliers and products, it's now time to create a relationship between these two. So when I talk about relationship, I'm talking about whenever I want to order a new product or new item from a supplier, I want to be able to reference the supplier and these products and have that information, all the extra information displayed alongside the supplier name or your product information, right? And I want to be able to do that multiple times. I want to use the same supplier for different products or multiple suppliers for same products. I should be able to do that, right? So what we will do to achieve that, or to basically create a list relationship, is we're going to create another list. And this time I'm going to call this list orders, or you can name it supplier orders or product orders, whatever you want to name it. But for simplicity, I just want to name this orders, right? And we create this list. Now, within this list, I'm not going to change the title because that's obviously unique to this orders list. And that could be, this title could be used to basically, add some comments or whatever you are ordering. But the most important thing is to basically referencing those two lists and to basically create a join between those two lists. Now to do that, we will actually be using the lookup columns. So for example, I'm going to create another column, and this time I'm going to use a lookup column, right? So in this list, I want to create an order. So when I create an order, I want to be able to enter the information for a supplier, and I want to display the relevant information for supplier, for example, supplier's name, supplier's email, and contact phone number, etc. And then I want to be able to say that that's the supplier and that's the product I'm actually ordering with the supplier, and that's the quantity. Okay, so first of all, we need to have this information created for a supplier. Okay, so I'm going to name this column supplier. Okay, and this is a lookup column, which is basically selecting to a list. So we're going to select a list as a source for this column. So in that case, this will be a supplier column that we created earlier, right? And then we're going to select the column from the supplier list, right? So whenever I enter this column, I want to basically reference that to the title column. Now you probably have noticed that we have renamed the title column to supplier name, which is not reflected here because this is the internal name that is actually referencing. But if you really want to change the name, you can actually go to the list settings and change the column name from there, and then that name will be reflected in this column, right? So that's title. Actually, let's do that. Let's change the name of that column. Okay, so we'll quickly go to supplier, and I'm going to the list settings, and I'm going to click on the title, and I'm going to change this to supplier name. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. So that's done. Now I'm going to go back to my orders column list, and I'm going to create a new column as I was doing before. That would be a lookup column next, and I'm going to name this supplier. That is lookup column. This is source is supplier, and if you see that the title has changed to supplier name, right? So I'm going to select the supplier name because that's what I want to select. With that, I can actually also select some extra information for that supplier. I can select the email, I can select the phone number, right? So I can have all that information displayed in this list, right? So once we do that, then the next thing, which is an important thing, is about this option, which basically says deletions from source list affect this list, right? Currently it's set to no, which means if the supplier name is deleted from my supplier list, what would happen to the supplier name in the order list, right? So currently this is set to no, which means if the supplier name is deleted, then nothing will happen to this orders list. The supplier name will still be there. But we don't want to do that if we really want to manage the supplier information from one source, which is our supplier list, right? So I would suggest switching this to yes, right? Then we have two options. One option is if the source, one option is that the source items cannot be deleted. Okay. What it means is if we have supplier A used in this orders list and someone tries to delete the supplier A from our supplier list, it won't be possible. It will basically display the message that this supplier name is used somewhere, so you can't delete that. Okay. But if you don't have the supplier name used in this list, then the supplier name can be deleted from the supplier list. Other option is deleting source items deletes values in this list. Okay. What it means is if the supplier A is deleted from the supplier list and supplier A is also used in this orders list, then the supplier A will be deleted from the orders list as well, right? And that could be dangerous because deleting that would have a direct effect on this deletion. So we don't want to do that. I would suggest using this option so that the source items cannot be deleted. It gives you a extra sort of protection, if someone is going to delete the supplier name. So the person that makes sure that supplier name is not used anywhere else. It basically prevents any accidental deletions. Okay. And the next option is if you want to allow multiple selections in this list, and do you want this column to be mandatory? We won't do that. Yes, this has to be mandatory. And do you want to enforce unique values? We don't want to enforce unique values in this list because we can have the same supplier listed multiple times, and we might be ordering multiple products from the same supplier, right? So if we toggle this to yes, then we won't be able to use the same supplier multiple times in the list. So I would like to keep this to no. And then add to all content types. That's yes, that's fine. Okay, and then we click yes. Now when we click yes, you will notice that it has actually added 3 columns, right? The first one is obviously the supplier. The second one is supplier email. And the third one is basically the supplier phone number, right? We'll have a look in a minute how this information gets populated. Okay. Now we will do the same for our products. Obviously we want to have the supplier added, then we want to have the product. So again, this will be a lookup column. So I'm going to select lookup next, and this time I'm going to call this product, and that's a lookup column, and this time I'm going to select products, and that's a title column I'm going to select and save, right? Then we have the products. Now we want to add another column, which is basically a quantity that we are ordering for that product. So I'm going to select that as a number next, and I'm going to say quantity, and that could be just a number, and I'm going to select save. If you want, you can add some extra columns, which is for your comments, or something you want to make notes on. Let's just call it notes, right? Just for your reference, single line of text or multiple line of text, that's up to you. And we're going to save it. Okay. So by doing this, what we have done is we have actually created a relationship between our supplier and products. Now it's time to enter some data, and let's see how it looks, right? So I'm going to add a new item, and I'm going to enter the title. For example, we want to order a laptop, right? This title is just for a commentary reference only, and let's just call it order for computers, right? For example. Okay. Now this supplier section, if we click on that, it actually gives us the drop down list, which is basically a lookup column referencing to the supplier list. So we are ordering some computers, let's just say from Microsoft. And what's the product? So the product obviously is computers, and quantity we are 5, and any notes, just say sample notes, right? And we click yes. Now once we do that, you will notice that the supplier email and supplier phone number is automatically populated, right? Because we have specified that we want to display this extra information from the supplier list to this order list, right? So what you can do now is obviously you can add multiple suppliers to this. Let's just go into the grid view, and I'm going to say order order for more computers, right? And this time you want to order this from Oracle, for example, and that's the information for Oracle. And then, the category is basically desktops, right? Or it could be computers as well, right? Quantity is obviously, let's just say 7. And then you have more items to add. So let's just say what product we want to order this time. We want to order some fruits, for example, right? Order for fruits, and we want to order this from let's just say ABC Technical Services, right? And that's done. So what you can, if you notice that you can actually create same product multiple times, and you can actually also create the same supplier, right? So for example, order for desktops. So I want to use Microsoft again, and I want to order desktops this time from Microsoft, right? So there is like a relationship that we have created within the orders list with the supplier list and with the product list. The benefit of this is, right, this supplier name and all that information is actually maintained in your supplier list. Product information is actually maintained in your product list, right? So if I go to my supplier, for example, and let's just say Microsoft's name has changed, right? Microsoft has changed its names to Microsoft Corporation, right? So the name has changed, and what we want to do now is obviously, have this information updated. So we just say save, and the name has changed. So if I go back to my orders list, I will see that the Microsoft Corporation is actually changed, everywhere. So I don't need to worry about updating it into the orders list, because this is actually maintained from my source list. And if someone wants to delete the supplier, for example, if I go back to the supplier and let's just say I want to delete Oracle, right? I just say delete, and we click delete. That's actually deleted. No, right? You would see that there is actually this error or information has occurred. It actually deleted, but it actually came back. If you look at that information, it actually says some changes could not be synced. Click here for more information, right? It basically says that's the name Oracle. It could not delete item, access denied, right? That's because this supplier name Oracle is actually used in our order list. And that's what we have specified when we created the lookup column, that these columns cannot be deleted from, the supplier cannot be deleted from the source list if there is a supplier used within your orders list. If you have separate teams who are managing the supplier information, they should be the one basically updating, deleting, or doing everything with supplier information. You might have a separate team managing the product information, and you might have another team which should only be focusing on the orders, right? So what you can do is you can actually give access to this supplier team. You can give read-only access to the team which manages your orders, and you can give contribute or edit access to the team which manages suppliers to the supplier list. That way you can separate the permissions as well, and each department will then be responsible for managing the information that they should be managing. All right, that's it for today. I hope you learned something new, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, put them below in the feedback box or comment box, and I will try to reply to your messages or questions as soon as possible. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.